MultimediaJay radio style.
Well, I've probably just had the low point of my day so far. I got to listen to a grown man whine and complain about World of Warcraft for an hour and a half straight. No, seriously. He tried to make it not look like he was whining about WoW for an hour and a half straight by introducing a few things to his discussion, some side topics and some tangents, but again and again and again and again and again, he kept going back to Blizzard, 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 WoW, 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 Legion, 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 Warlords, 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 sucks, sucks, sucks. And let me just say that that is the sort of thing that I would never put on YouTube. Because as annoying as Warlords of Draenor has been, I really wouldn't be just complaining about it for an hour and a half straight like that. Oh, and he got thousands of views, by the way, for this. So, whining like a little kid about World of Warcraft, thousands of views. And that's just on YouTube, because he brought it over from Twitch. So, whatever he had on Twitch, plus whatever he had on YouTube, wow, I didn't know it was so lucrative in terms of views and activity to sit there and act like you're only a third of your age, or even a quarter of your age, or even a fifth of your age for an hour and a half straight about a game that if you hate it that much, just stop freaking playing it. It's that simple, really. I know I certainly will. So before we get on to the main discussion about metagaming, a quick update on what the heck's going on with me in WoW, since it's almost monopolized the channel. That's not going to continue. I'm basically just messing around with alts until Guild Wars 2 Heart of Thorns comes out. So that's really it. WoW is just a mild curiosity as I try to get my money's worth with this expansion and just close it out completely. I'm just messing around with a few alts. I actually brought Smita to Hellfire Citadel. You know, I talked about the catch-up mechanics and things like that. Well, I struck gold with those hack job catch-up mechanics because it only took a day of piggybacking on other folks' attacking the rares and stuff like that to get Smita up to full baleful and able to start raiding Hellfire Citadel. It didn't take long at all. If I had followed the catch-up mechanics as they first appeared, do your dailies, buy your Apexis crystals, it probably would have taken, buy your Apexis rewards, it probably would have taken significantly longer. But actually, I just went to all the rare kills and didn't even try to do the dailies and was geared in about a day or so. So, yay, cool for hack job catch-up mechanics. And so I caught Smita up to where Goodmain is and started raiding Hellfire Citadel because I figured I'd go in as a disciplined priest just for the heck of it instead of bringing my rep paladin along for the ride. Shorter queue because Smite is a healer. And LFR, Hellfire Citadel, not too interesting at all. I seriously think I'm having more fun doing Apexis dailies and going to Hellfire Citadel because I ran into a bunch of morons in LFR that can't handle raid mechanics, and there's no sign of any kind of raiding guild that I could join because why should I join any guilds when I'm thinking of leaving the game in a couple of weeks? It's quite a predicament, don't you think? And so, WoW Warlords of Draenor will end its days as a game I actually play, with me just messing around with alts, going for transmogs or something like that, just a casual curiosity. And it's really too bad. But then again, we are talking about an MMORPG that's literally half the game it used to be. I'm just not going to sit around complaining about it for an hour and a half straight. Now, moving on, this issue with what this guy did, complaining about a game for an hour and a half straight, is exactly the sort of thing that I was talking about on Out of Continues. I think it's been long enough since my last appearance in Out of Continues that I can start talking about metagaming and just what it does to poison gaming as we know it. And I think it's been long enough since the show that I can start talking about this without it stealing the show's thunder in terms of people listening to the podcast. Because I imagine just about everybody is going to listen to Staffa and I's discussion on this matter within the context of the upcoming World of Warcraft Legion expansion. Everybody who wanted to listen to that's probably already listened to it by now. But metagaming is big. And sadly, it's one of those things that people should care about that many people don't. And it slides under the radar, causes damage to gaming as we know it, and causes a lot of the crap, or is at least partially involved, in a lot of the crap that goes on in gaming journalism and all kinds of other stuff today. Now, what am I talking about? Maybe you are like when I interviewed Staff about this. Well, I guest hosted, if that counts. But we went back and forth about the concept, and one of the things Staffa mentioned was that he had heard the term metagame, as in overall game strategy or something like that, but he'd never heard it used as a verb, like metagaming or something along those lines. He never heard the term metagaming. So it looks like I have to catch you folks up, for those of you that don't follow this sort of thing. Now, metagaming is, you can actually Google it. It's basically when you use stuff from outside the game world to affect your experience inside the game world. Instead of just playing the game and having this experience and basically having fun, you constantly reference stuff completely outside the game world. In my Neverwinter Nights days, playing on online persistent world servers about 10 years ago or so, which started this whole online RPG thing for me before I even touched an MMO. Matter of fact, at the time, I was repulsed by the idea of paying a monthly bill to play a video game. But in my Neverwinter Nights days, metagaming was the sort of thing that would get you banned. Because I was on a persistent world roleplay server, you had to roleplay, it made the story more interesting, and the people running the server certainly weren't anywhere near as talented as most MMO developers in terms of content creation and release, probably because it was just a couple of guys doing it in their spare time when they got home from work in the evening and not any full-time, big budget, whatever. And so a lot of the in-game content was actually generated by our role-playing and the stories that we developed between our characters and the things we had going on and all the ways in which we engaged in this Neverwinter Nights world. Now, metagaming was something that could get you banned. Basically, even things like twinking. So, if you, for example, referred to somebody by their name because you read it on the screen and your character didn't actually know what their name was, it broke RP and you could get in trouble for it. Likewise with twinking. If your high-level character left a powerful item in the back alley of a city somewhere for your low-level character to just happen to find, you could get banned from the server for that. It was basically, in the name of immersion and role-playing and creating a good story for all the people that played this game, in the name of all of that, basically, you weren't supposed to use out-of-game information with your in-game characters. Now, I have heard this term next to never since leaving that kind of a roleplay community, but doesn't mean that it isn't still out there, and it isn't, the effects of it aren't this, that, and the other. Metagaming is everywhere. Everybody has more abilities to do it nowadays than ever before, thanks to this stuff that people normally praise. Oh, look, we have gaming media, and we have people doing reviews on YouTube, and we have people doing Let's Plays, stuff like that. There's lots of ways to form opinions of a game without even playing it. And that is a problem. Another thing that metagaming does is it damages our ability to have good experiences in video games, and then we sit around wondering, what happened to the gaming of my childhood? What happened to all these great experiences I had when I played my first Mario or Zelda game or Sonic or whatever? What happened to all of this? Why are video games so terrible nowadays? Could it possibly be that you are the problem because you're picking apart every single game that you play? You can't just play the darn game anymore. Now it's like, oh, how are the mechanics? How's the jumping? How's the platforming? Has the combat balanced? You pick apart all of these things in every single game you play, and you wonder why you have less fun when as a kid you just, oh, here's the story, here's my character, let's go save the princess, let's go save the world, let's go defeat the giant monster. You see what the difference is? And it doesn't take forming an opinion for metagaming to damage your experience of a game either. I first started experiencing this when I first started going to GameFAQs on a regular basis, and I'm a big fan of RPGs. I like games where you buy one game and it keeps you occupied for months or even years. So I like these sorts of immersive games with a big, huge story going on. But I started to ruin that, even with some of the old-fashioned JRPGs that I used to play back years and years ago, when I first started playing them with a GameFAQs guide open on my computer off to the side, because I'm going to be spending hours playing this game. I'd better go through and get a 100% complete on the first try instead of, going through it once and then going back to get 100% complete later. Basically, I spoiled much of the game because I had a GameFAQs walkthrough because I couldn't miss any single treasure chest in the world of balance in Final Fantasy VI. It's just, oh man, it's just, and then I started noticing it after about a few games of this. I'm like, hey, I'm kind of cheapening my experience and spoiling large parts of the story by going through the game with a walkthrough alongside. How about we just play it the normal way and then go for 100% completion afterwards? And it's kind of like how Guild Wars 2 does their dungeons. You have story mode, which is the tie-in to the story that advances the story of Tyria. And then you have adventure modes of various types where you can go and, do achievements or 100% complete, 100% explore various dungeons and things like that. So, yeah, it doesn't take much before it starts eroding away at your gaming experience. Fast forward a couple more years to the advent of YouTube, and everybody and their mother's uncle who was into video games that made YouTube videos trying to be the next AVGN or something, with everybody and their mother's uncle trying to be a game reviewer. Now, I was on board with the whole AVGN craze. I was on board with the whole game reviewing craze. There were numerous other reviewers that I was subscribed to, but eventually that hit a limit. Eventually, I started to disagree with the AVGN. Like, for example, his review of the Bugs Bunny birthday blowout I found was rather stupid, and I think he played Fester's Quest badly on purpose just to have something to complain about. But that was when I really started noticing all these people out there who were involved on YouTube that played video games all wanted to be some kind of game reviewer of some sort. And that fostered some habits, like not being able to play a game anymore without constantly picking it apart. Oh, how's the collision detection? How's the combat balance? How efficient are the graphics? This, that, or the other. All these technical details that basically ruin someone's ability to just enjoy a video game. Just play the darn thing. And we wonder why. And then, of course, you have indie games, the whole indie game craze, or, oh, look at these great games like Bastion and stuff like that. Look at all these great games that came out of nowhere that people are enjoying the heck out of. Yeah, you know why? Because they don't have these kinds of expectations for indie developers as they do for AAA developers. It's a whole different discussion entirely, but I think the term AAA game should be destroyed and never used again because it's created this false hierarchy of, oh, you may not expect an indie developer to make a good game, so if they do make one, it's a pleasant surprise, and you expect the AAA folks to always be on their A game, so if you see one that's only middle of the road, it's a nasty surprise, and that's a completely different discussion altogether. But do you see what's going on here? People are complaining that video games suck these days, that you keep doing the same crap over and over again, that it's all rehashes and gaming is dead and this, that, and the other. And you know what they're not doing? They're not just sitting down and playing the freaking game and enjoying the darn story anymore. I mean, and we're creating stuff to complain about and then wondering why we're so miserable when we play video games because we can't just play a game anymore. We have to pick everything apart. Heck, we won't even buy video games anymore without reading at least 3 or 4 reviews which might contain spoilers. Oh, I'm going to watch this Let's Play on YouTube. Oh, how come I'm not having as good of an experience with this game as I thought I would when I saw so-and-so's Let's Play? Probably because you've had the entire story spoiled by online commentary. And then there's Warlords of Draenor. Probably the first of Blizzard's MMORPG World of Warcraft expansions that are going to be victimized by metagaming. If you play Warlords of Draenor on its own merits with no outside input, you would think it was a halfway decent game. It has a decent story, a little contrived at times, but the art assets look great. The questing experience up till Tanan Jungle is pretty awesome. There's some really nice story that goes on in there, and even some of the raids. You go to High Mall and you get these big dumb ogres like, saying stuff like, me smash you, and stuff like that. And it's comical that these knuckleheads are big raid bosses that you need people to take down. Then you go to Blackrock Foundry and you got the Arnold Schwarzenegger orcs. Yes, they're a thing. Those of you who aren't into WoW, there's 2 orcs in Blackrock Foundry that are like, they go around talking like this, and yeah. So it's like, and there's still things to do in the game. It's not like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde or anything, but if you play Warlords based on commentators like Heel versus Babyface and this other guy that screamed and complained for an hour and a half, you're going to think it sucks, even though it's only comparatively a bad expansion. It's not on par with something like, say, some of the really horrible games that the AVGN has picked apart over the years. It's not a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's not, it's not Big Rigs over-the-road racing. It's a perfectly playable game that maybe folks should be able to buy at a discounted price and make it worth it that way. That's really it. It's only comparatively a bad expansion if you compare it to something like Wrath of the Lich King, Burning Crusade, even Cataclysm and Mists of Pandaria have come into this discussion. Despite its problems, Warlords is a comparatively bad expansion. It has some good parts to it, and maybe people should be able to pick it up at a discounted price to make it more worth it, or something along those lines. But quite frankly, a lot of the hatred towards Warlords is because of comparisons to previous expansions. And that's really what it boils down to. And so what we see here is a game that's getting poisoned, so to speak, by stuff that has nothing to do with the experience in-game itself. I mean, yeah, okay, so if the questing's good, but the raids are rubbish, and everything that happens after you hit 100 is nonsense, then go through the questing experience and then cancel your subscription, which people have been doing with these sub numbers that have come out recently, although Blizzard just finished a quarter, so we're waiting to see if the Legion hype train is doing anything to band-aid their situation. As for me, I'm just waiting to see what Heart of Thorns brings to Guild Wars 2, although I might cut things in World of Warcraft a little early to finish the personal story, the pre-expansion story, get through that and finish that up before the expansion launches later this month, actually. So we'll just see what happens, whether or not ArenaNet has learned from what went wrong with the initial release of Guild Wars 2, and see what happens as a result of that. Also, WildStar has gone free to play. I'm curious about that. I might check that out as well. But as far as WoW goes, yeah, I mean, there's really not much to do except mess around with alts, and as far as the Legion hype train is concerned, I'll believe it when I see it. When Legion really is awesome and worth picking up, then I'll pick it up. Otherwise, well, just mess around in Warlords until the end of the expansion, then, I don't know, whatever after that. But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to dedicate a channel to Warlord sucks, Warlord sucks, Warlord sucks, Warlord sucks, or spend an hour and a half complaining about World of Warcraft like a little 6-year-old and get it, even if it does get thousands of views, because there's enough people mad at World of Warcraft right now that you can actually get some easy views by just complaining about, although maybe not with an actual gaming video, maybe just sit in front of the camera bellowing out about WoW or whatever. I almost said belching out WoW. I was like, what? So, because, gaming video hate and stuff like that. But anyways. Yeah. Now take this phenomenon of metagaming, where people can't just enjoy a game anymore. They can't just play a game anymore. They have to pick every single game apart every single time they buy a game. Imagine this phenomenon spreading to more and more games or entire genres. Imagine how miserable things are going to get. Well, you know what? It's happening. There's people out there that can't just enjoy a game anymore, but instead of just doing something else in their free time, they just complain about video games when they don't realize that they themselves are the problem. Seriously. I've been reminded of this with a game besides World of Warcraft that I've played, Wolf the Red Hood Diaries. Picked it up on Steam after the aforementioned Out of Continues discussion, because this was an indie game where the ambitions of the developers killed the whole studio. They bankrupted themselves, and the game that was supposed to be a chapter-based story where you got new chapters every couple of months now just gets cut short after essentially the first part of the game because the company went broke. But you know what helped kill this game? People on Steam weren't that impressed with it. They picked it apart. Oh no, the combat was a little clunky. Well, even though it's an indie studio, they picked it apart like it was a AAA release, although the studio was trying to go for AAA quality. But even if it cost them their studio, basically people picked it apart, didn't give it very good reviews on Steam, it didn't sell very well, and it killed the studio. And this, folks, is why games are so repetitive, why there's a bazillion Mario games, and why there's a bazillion Zelda games, and people go screaming all across the internet, why can't gaming companies give us something original? Because you know what happens when they give you something original? People don't buy it. It becomes a dark horse. It becomes something you make YouTube videos complaining about, like all the 2 games on the NES. Zelda 2, oh no, too different from Zelda 1, blah blah blah. Castlevania 2, oh no, too different from Castlevania 1, blah blah blah. Mario 2, oh no, too different from Super Mario 1, oh no, how horrible, princess. A gaming company tried to do something unique and original. Psychonauts! Back in the days of Tech TV and extended play before X-Play became a thing, it was one of those great games that nobody played. I have it on PS2. I'll probably eventually get the Steam version because I really don't feel like looking at PS2 standard def rubbish in order to play a game like Psychonauts. I'll probably get it on Steam eventually when I feel like catching up on some of that stuff. Heck, I've got a 360 controller, so I certainly have a good controller for platform games, but it's just again and again and again and again, you see people just pick apart everything. And then this starts a little feedback loop, so to speak, and then somewhat original-ish games like Wolf the Red Hood Diaries, which put a dark spin on a classic fairy tale. So Little Red Riding Hood is all grown up now, and she's this angsty, bloodthirsty assassin type who's out to spill blood because of what the big bad wolf did to her when she was a little kid at her grandmother's house. You know, all of these original things, they end up getting metagamed to death, and, well, the stuff that just repeats stuff again and again and again sells. And then people go on the internet whining and complaining about how the gaming industry just does the same stuff again and again and again, when really, we're the problem. And then, when someone like me says that we could possibly be the problem, you'll get some contrarian commentator type who wants to tick people off to get views on YouTube out there that'll go around saying, well, you know, we're not the problem, it's gaming companies' problem, blah, 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 even though gaming companies are just responding to their perceived consumer demand. People try making original, different types of games, and they don't sell. People make the umpteenth Mario game, the umpteenth Zelda game, the umpteenth Call of Duty, and it still sells. Or better yet, the umpteenth Madden, and people still buy it. Seriously. Stop complaining. Shut up, quit dwelling on the problem, and look for the answer. And the answer lies with us being able to actually enjoy a freaking video game again. I've tossed around the idea of converting my gaming commentaries into something resembling a cross between commentary and machinima, or maybe just going more and more into the narrative side of gaming videos instead of constantly doing commentaries. And I think I might try that to get away from this just constant commentary stuff, because, quite frankly, this problem of metagaming has gone on long enough. And I'd like to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. There's probably more I can say on this discussion, on this whole topic of metagaming, but we'll leave this as is for now. We've passed the 20-minute mark, which cements this clearly into the radio-style series, of course. I was planning on putting it in this series anyways. But anyways, yeah, metagaming. It matters. You should care about it, and learn to spot it, because if nobody else wants to listen, if you can actually just put aside all the review culture or going to IGN before buying every single game, blah, 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 you know, if you can put all of that aside, maybe you could actually find video games to be more enjoyable again. Seriously, give it a shot. You might be surprised. Thanks for listening, everybody. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.